Hello and welcome back to the MLB DFS Slate breakdown for July 19th. We are back. The slate yesterday was absolutely wild. We will break that down shortly. Before we get into everything, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to all our videos. And if you are not already, what's stopping you? Come join us at LineStar, only $29.99 per month. If you don't want to pay that upfront monthly, what you could do is you can try one of these promo offers that we have through FanDuel, Thrive, Sleeper, and Underdog. If you're a new customer to them, you could hit one of these offers and get 2 to 6 months free. Now, let's get into the fun. So what we're going to do, we're going to start out with the perfect lineups on both FanDuel and DraftKings, go over the winning lineups from yesterday, and then after that, we are going to go and check into today's slate, today's main slate, I should say, and go over the projected pitchers and the best stacks. All right, so yesterday, absolutely insane slate. I don't know if I've ever seen so many guys hit 2 home runs in one day, but yesterday was a wild one. So as we did talk about, I really liked Logan Allen yesterday, was high on Sandoval. Those are the two pitchers that made the perfect lineup. And then we had a Diamondback stack, and then pretty much just all one-offs from there on out. It was a very weird slate. I've never seen so many teams with such high scoring slates, scoring games. Just absolutely bonkers, and it produced some insane lineups. DraftKings perfect lineup, 337. The winning lineup was 233. So literally over 100-point difference. That is wild. The winning lineup had Medina and Sandoval as pitchers, so very contrarian pitchers and very contrarian stack. So we had a 5-man Detroit stack here. 5-man Detroit stack here. Then a one-off of Austin Riley, Corbin Carroll, and Fernando Tatis. So went with the cheap stack, cheap pitchers, and then their one-offs were just total studs, and the studs went off. So they won. They won by over 3 points. Congrats to Colin McCourt. Great lineup. Nice little construction there, and way to take it home. Now let's jump into the FanDuel. Good old perfect lineup. And all right, so we got Patrick Sandoval coming in, 3-man Diamondback stack with a 2-man Tigers stack. So pretty interesting lineup there. And the winning lineup was 315 compared to 434 for the perfect lineup. So just a huge discrepancy. And it just goes back to, we had a ton of double home run games yesterday, and picking those guys would have been incredibly hard. But our winning lineup did stick with a 3-man stack of Arizona, 2-man of Atlanta, and then 2 one-offs to make it happen. Winning lineup, had a 9-point game and only 25 out of the pitcher, but was still able to get it because they nailed Christian Walker, Austin Riley, Corbin Carroll, Mickey Monarch. Just a really nice lineup here. So congrats to Chiba. You won $25K. You beat almost 27,000 other lineups to do it. It was a good lineup. Love to see it. Now let's get in today's slate, shall we? And all right, so we got a much smaller slate today. We still do have 8 games, which is nice to see. And we have some interesting spots. There is no Colorado on this slate, but there is still some very, very interesting hitting positions. Obviously, Great American Small Park. And Truist Park has very similar weather as yesterday. We saw that ball was flying yesterday. So I would assume the ball is likely to be flying easily once again, making that a very interesting spot. So now pitcher-wise, we got Luis Castillo, 42% owned, coming in as the highest owned. And, that's decent, but he just hasn't been that good lately. 5.55 FIP, ERA of 3.90 over his last five. So his ERA has been a little bit lower, but it seems to me like he's been getting a little bit lucky. With all that, his K rate is way down. 19% opposed to almost 27% over his last 20. That is absolutely a little scary. Now, he is against Minnesota, striking out 28% versus righties. So you can make a case for Castillo here. There is solid upside. LineStar projection's only almost 21, so it is decent. Combined K rate 24% here, so it's not a terrible spot for Castillo. Ownership is there, though. And this Twins lineup is kind of getting a little sneaky good. They have some guys heating up, but Castillo is much better at home, averaging 42.6% more fantasy points at home. I could see you going either way on this. Castillo hasn't been great. The StatCast data is a little scary. Minnesota has been hitting decently lately, and they have some sneaky, younger talent in that lineup. So, it's up to you if you want to go with him or fade. Next, we have Carlos Rodon. All right, I think Carlos Rodon is way too cheap here, $8,500. And if you think he's cheap here, he's incredibly cheap on FanDuel here. But $8,500, I think, is just too cheap. You have a guy that he went 88 pitches last time out. I think we can look at, 90 plus. So he's pretty much fully stretched out. Angels lineup is striking out 24% versus lefties. While the Angels lineup does have some nice hitters, Carlos Rodon is an elite pitcher. 33.8% K rate over his last 33% over his last 5. Super high combined K rate. The one issue we do need to bring up is his StatCast data. Now, his StatCast data would only be going over these 2 games, one of them of which was in Colorado. So Rodon hasn't looked totally polished, but look, he's still working himself back. I think he is still an extremely good pitcher, and I don't mind this spot whatsoever. The one thing I do need to bring up is that it is very warm in Anaheim at Angel Stadium, where the wind is also blowing out. So that ball may travel a little bit further than normal today. But I do like that spot for Rodon. Next, we got Verlander. Verlander is another one that I think is probably a little bit too low of priced. I really like Verlander, especially being a little bit lower owned. White Sox strike out a lot, almost 26%. They're not great versus righties with a low WOBA. It is in a pitcher-friendly park. Verlander's been good lately. The one thing with him is that K rate is slightly limited. We only have it at a 21.8% combined K rate. However, with that being said, his strikeout line is 6.5 today. So sportsbooks are liking his strikeout stuff a little bit for today. So, also do need to bring up, though, that LineStar is not a huge fan, projecting him for under 15. Charlie Morton next. This Diamondbacks offense has been very good. The ball was flying very easily yesterday, so that does give me some apprehension to playing Morton. But Morton has been really good lately. 26% K rate, 3.26 FIP. StatCast data has been really good. I could see you going here. It is extremely risky today. But, he's been feeling it, and if he's missing bats and getting those strikeouts, the weather won't really matter. Erod is next. He has a picture-perfect matchup with wind blowing in. KC Royals versus lefties are just terrible, striking out a ton. low WOBA, low ISO. He's been good against KC in his career. LineStar is liking him with the 19%. He has low ownership. It's a very interesting spot here. He's had a real solid K rate over his last 5 at 30%. Combined K rate 27.9%. I think Erod's at a very interesting spot at going, relatively low owned. Kenta Maeda. Now, Maeda has been boom or bust lately, but we know when he's feeling it, he can really put it up. And Seattle does strike out a decent amount versus righties. They also haven't been great versus Maeda. 29 plate attempts, 192, almost a 38% K rate. So I think there is some merit to liking Maeda. It is a little bit risky just because the Mariners can hit the ball hard. It's just what Maeda shows up today. Is it the one that is very good and strikes out, a ton of guys? Or is it the one we saw in Oakland where he gives up 3 runs in 3 innings and walks 4 guys? It could be either one. I think there is a solid case, though, to be made about Maeda. Barrios is probably a little cheap for how he's been pitching, but this Padres lineup is just really hitting right now, so pretty scary to go against him. Darvish, it's the same as Barrios, really, is that Blue Jays lineup is really good, and Darvish has just been okay lately. Another thing you need to bring up is the Blue Jays have hit him well. 79 plate attempts are hitting 274 off of him. So that is pretty scary, and it does lead you to maybe wanting to do some low-owned Blue Jays stacks. Outside of that, I don't really like anything on the real low area. I think you could do Ryan Yarbrough versus the Tigers, who strike out a decent amount, got wind blowing in. They're not great offense. Yarborough's StatCast data looks good. He's had 4 starts now, up to 80 pitches or so. Went 6 innings last time. He does have a little bit of K upside at 5,500 and a projection of 13.5. It's kind of interesting here. Would allow you to really pay up for some bats here. All right, now let's flip over to FanDuel. So, FanDuel, we got Luis Castillo, 42% owned. Carlos Rodon, only 7,500. I think at 30% owned, I would be hammering Carlos Rodon if only 30%, stays that way. I think 7,500 for his upside being almost fully stretched out is just way too low. I think he is a way better pitcher than that. So, don't mind that. Erod, only 4% owned, is kind of interesting. As we talked about, we do like him. He has some nice little upside, so that's good. Verlander, I don't mind. He's probably appropriately priced here, but not a bad spot. Maeda's pretty cheap and low owned as well, and can give you some upside like the expensive guys. So that is absolutely a little interesting there. Now, let's get into some stacks. Let's get into the fun. All right. Highest owned, ATL. Absolutely no surprise here. With that, it's showing that this is the highest owned stack. However, realize that that's 5 guys taking up almost 30K. This stack likely won't be that high owned just because it's incredibly hard to fit it in. But they're in a very good spot. Projection is high. They're high owned, but you can't go wrong with that hitting weather against Ryan Nelson, Nelson's just not that great, and I definitely really like the Braves today. Next, we got the Giants versus Graham Ashcroft. Ashcroft hasn't been good. Pretty high FIP. It is in Great American Small Park, so I think you absolutely have to consider the Giants here. And those 2 teams are really on the high-owned side. We do have the Cubbies here stepping in a little bit, which the Cubbies are interesting. That Washington pitching staff is not great, and that bullpen is bad. So don't mind the Mets either, as I'm sure we'll talk about them a little bit. All right, so highest projected, we got the Braves. No surprise, they're in a great spot. Cincinnati also versus Stripling. Stripling is a decent pitcher, but he can really get blown up. 4.87 FIP over his last 20. Been really good over his last 5, though, with only a 3.19 FIP. So it's an interesting spot for Cincinnati. They're going low owned and, in a good spot, decent hitting weather and all that. Arizona, Arizona is very interesting. Morton has been very good, but he gives up the long ball, and we have good hitting weather. So there absolutely could be a couple home runs on Arizona. So I would say that stack is interesting. All right, and we've pretty much talked about those pitchers now. And now let's go to the value. Washington is popping up. I love to pick against Kyle Hendricks, so I am happy that Washington's popping up here a little bit. 5.38 FIP over his last 5. 4.42 over his last 20. I think Washington does merit some love. KC versus Erod. Look, Erod's just been really good this year. I don't love picking on him. And I don't necessarily think you need to, but there's absolutely no ownership going there. So that does make it stand out a little bit. Giants. Look, they're very good value here. Not at all surprised if 2-3 home runs happen on the Giants side today versus Ashcroft, and you can get them cheap. So nice little lineup filler here. Angels versus Rodon. Rodon's given up like 6 runs in his 2 starts, so there's definitely a little merit for some Angels. Minnesota crushed the chalk yesterday of Brian Wu, and now can they do it against Castillo? They absolutely can. They have some young guys that are interesting with some power and speed, and that Minnesota Twins lineup seems to be coming around a little bit. All right, now ceiling. Braves are all over the ceiling. No surprise. So Braves are all over the projection high and all over the ceiling high. It's a good spot. Cincinnati is popping up too. They, however, do have a bit of leverage with them. Padres are popping up. They've just been a very good offense. One thing we don't see that is popping up in this is the Mets or the Blue Jays. Let's talk about the Blue Jays a little bit. Darvish hasn't been all that good this year. Blue Jays have been hitting him well over his career, giving up a 274 average. So I think there is some merit to some Blue Jays stacks, especially because this Padre bullpen just has not been that great. So I'm very interested in that. Mets, they're not really popping up on the system right now, but look, Toussaint, 5.34 FIP over his last 20, 4 over his last 5. The bullpen of the White Sox hasn't been good. I think it does merit some Met stacks. They've also been hitting decently, so I think all of that is interesting. A lot of different ways to go on this slate. It's going to be a fun one. You guys, good luck today. I don't think I'll be back tomorrow because I believe it is only a 3-game slate. If I'm wrong about that, then I will be back. But if not, I will see you guys Friday. Good luck today, and let's win some money. If you're not already, also come join us at LineStar. $29.99. Adios, y'all.